Jakże ma kasę. Senegal.
in the plan. Yes. How are you? Yes. Yes. How are you?
Yes, yes, yes. The unit again.
I'm fine, thank you. I'm Adele Zimbabwe Rights Commission. Pleased to meet you.
This is one that way. All right. So wait. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If we could just settle down. Right, if I could just have all of us to settle. Thank you. All right. Oh, good morning, everyone. Mangwanani, Mamukase, Salibonani. Okay, great. Welcome to the National Child Protection Conference 2026. And before we start, we get our beats together. Can I ask all of us to rise for the playing of the national anthem? thank you. Can I ask that we remain standing for our opening prayer? Can I ask Sister Teresa Nyadombo from Caritas Zimbabwe to come and give us our opening prayer? Thank you.
Let us pray. Let us pray in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Today, we thank God for new life. We thank Him for the gift of family, for the gift of children. We also thank God for bringing us together. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 19, verse 14, Jesus says to his disciples, "Let the little children come to me." He said this to ask the disciples to understand the importance of a child in the midst of life. We are gathered here to honor, to nurture, to preserve, to form the little children who are entrusted to us in homes, in schools, in hospitals, in homes, and in our country. May God bless our country, that we will be people of humility, people of trust, and also people of love. We make our prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, sister. I think we can all sit. So, ladies and gentlemen, today is a very important day. In fact, the next 4 days are very important days, because these will be the days that we will be attending this National Child Protection Conference. It's running under the theme, Strengthening Zimbabwe's Child Protection System and Sustainable Investment for the Implementation of the National Action Plan for Children 4, as 2026 to 2030, which will be launched at this very conference that is on the final day. Let me start by acknowledging some of the important people, not that we are not all important, but some of our very distinguished dignitaries that we have with us. The Permanent Secretary for Bulawayo Metropolitan Province, Mr. P. Nyoni. I'll also ask just our delegates just to lift a finger so that people can see who we are. Thank you. Permanent Secretary for Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare, Mr. P. Kunaka, represented today by the Acting Chief Director, Social Development and Labor Administration, Mr. T. Zimunga. Thank you for the thumbs up. The Permanent Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Trade, represented today by Ambassador R.N. Chikawa. Thank you. Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, Commissioner Dr. T. Nenga. Also from Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, Commissioner Mrs. Adelis Sibuta. The UNICEF Deputy Representative, Fiakra Makasi. Charge d'Affaires, Mr. David Diapi from the Embassy of Sweden. We also have senior government officials present, UN agencies represented, members of the Fourth Estate, the media, thank you for coming. All of you, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this ball rolling. So as I was sitting down when I was given this task, I kept asking myself, what is it, or how am I going to measure success of this National Child Protection Conference? Because we look like we are all adults, and it's National Child Protection Conference. So how are we going to measure the success of this particular conference? And then I realized that we all need to start thinking as children if we are going to solve children's issues. Are we in agreement? Most people would tell me that growing up, I would have loved to be an adult. I would have loved to be an adult before I then became an adult and realized that being an adult is a scam. So I am going to randomly pick from all of us right now to check. Unfortunately, for those who I know names, I am going to pick on you to check what is it about being a child that you miss the most. If I can find that out, then I do know that we are all thinking as children and we are going to come up with practical solutions that will help our children. So, when you then realized that growing up was a scam, what is it that you then found out? Right.
Now, I miss to be looked after. Everything I was just getting for free. Everything. But now I have to find something to look after children. So I'm missing to be looked after. Thank you.
Please take the microphone right behind you. I still have you being looked after. Some of the things we take for granted.
Hi, I think I missed the shopping because when I was a kid, I could pick whatever I want and put it in the trolley. Now as an adult, I can't do that. I have to check the prices.
All right, from that end, oh yeah, Dougie, what do you miss?
Thanks, Butler. So for me, I miss playing. I miss doing games with my peers. Now as an adult, I have to think about the games that I want to play.
Okay.
But as a child, I can just do anything.
Great, great. Okay, so we all miss being a child, but at the same time, growing up is inevitable. And the best thing is that because we know what we miss, we know how to best make the right decisions for our children. Ladies and gentlemen, let me not waste too much time and call upon the Secretary for Provincial Affairs and Devolution, Bulawayo Metropolitan Province, Mr. Pignoni, to give us our welcome remarks. Sir.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies, the Secretary for Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare, Mr. P. Kunaka, hereby represented by the Acting Chief Director, Mr. Zimunga. The Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Trade, hereby represented by Ambassador Chikava. Commissioner Dr. Nenga from the Human Rights Commission, Commissioner Delis Sibuta, Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, the UNICEF Deputy Representative, Mark Arce, the Chargé d'Affaires from the Embassy of Sweden, Mr. David Diaby, senior government officials, UN agencies represented here, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Sarbonan, Kaziwai. Ndimacheloni. You say Abudhi. Ndimacheloni. And then the men shall say Nda, and the women shall say Ah. At my count, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's the vendor way of greeting. I'm pleased to welcome you to Bulawayo, Emzini Wamakosi Lamakosikazi, the city of kings and queens, for the National Child Protection Conference and the launch of the National Action Plan for Children 2026 to 2030. This conference aims to agree strategies to advance the implementation of the action plan, to review progress in strengthening child protection system, to mobilize sustainable political and financial commitments, as well as to identify and analyze risks, current and emerging, that will negatively impact on child development in Zimbabwe. This collaboration is the cornerstone of child protection. The government of Zimbabwe acknowledges the vital roles played by various stakeholders in this crucial national dare I say, even international effort to promote the well-being of all children. As a country and region, we are faced with many challenges in our efforts to protect our children from children living and working on our streets with all the attendant risks involved to the existential drugs and substance abuse menace. In the movement of unaccompanied minors across borders, we must develop appropriate policy and legislative responses. But even more importantly, we must promote a culture of protecting the children right across our society. It is a very common African adage that a child is raised by the village. It is often said that children are the future, but for them to advance human development in our country, we must create an environment that allows the children to thrive and reach their full potential. A species that does not protect its young is ultimately doomed. This applies to humans as it does to the whole of the African kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again welcome you to Bulawayo, to our neighborhood, Konyama Ipedi, Peramazinho, which is a place where you can't finish the meat, but the meat might finish your teeth. I urge you to find time to sample our cuisine, which is meat-based, and we are unapologetic about that. And it is said in this neighborhood, if you reach my age and you have not had a battle with gout, you are a poor man indeed. Let's sit down, reason together, and solve this, and it is the noblest of all causes. The future of our children, what will they say about us when we are long gone? Will they speak to our civilization, which we know is great and all-encompassing? And of course,
Thank you, Secretary Nyori. Another round of applause for you, please. It is not very often that you do come across someone when you enter into their home and what they keep offering you is meat and more meat. So please enjoy the meat here in Bulawayo. Thank you very much, Secretary Nyori. A lot of people have also been looking at me funny. They said, well, you've been introducing the high table and you did not introduce yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Butler Nepure. And this is not the news that I'm reading. We are just here for the National Child Protection Conference. Thank you. And you are allowed to clap. Before we do move on to our next speaker, it is also important that we all know who we are, isn't it? Seeing that there are so many of us, we will not get a chance to introduce every single one of us. I am going to ask you to do something for me right now. Those that are sitting on the right side, please look at the one sitting on the left side. Tell them who you are, shake hands, and then we are done. Let's go, now. Okay, done. Shall I assume that we now know each other? Hello? We do? Great stuff. Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask that we get our opening remarks, and these are from the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare, Mr. Kunaga, who is represented today by the Acting Director, Social Development and Labor Administration, Mr. Zimunga.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony. Let me acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary for Bulawayo Metropolitan Province, Mr. Pinyoni, Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Trade, here represented by Ambassador N. Chikawa, Zimbabwe Human Rights Commissioners who are here, Dr. T. Nenga and Commissioner Mrs. Adelis Buta, the UNICEF Deputy Representative, Mr. Fichara Makasi, Charge d'Affaires for the Embassy of Sweden, Mr. David Diaby, senior government officials here present, UN agencies here represented, members of the media fraternity, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct honor and privilege to witness this important child protection conference. This conference demonstrates our shared obligation in advancing the rights, care, and protection of every child in Zimbabwe. The conference has been convened to achieve 5 important objectives. 1, to review progress and lessons learned in strengthening child protection systems and services. Secondly, to analyze emerging child protection risks and their implications for policy and programming. Third, to strengthen integrated and multi-sectoral responses across social welfare, justice, education, health, labor, civil registration, and other key sectors. Fourth, to mobilize sustainable political commitment and financing for child protection. And finally, to generate practical recommendations that will guide the implementation of the National Action Plan for Children 2026 to 2030. The inaugural conference held in 2017 in Victoria Falls marked a significant milestone in Zimbabwe's child protection journey through the launch of the National Case Management System for the welfare and protection of children. Since then, government, working with development partners and other players, communities, children themselves, has made notable progress in strengthening child protection systems over the past decade through legislative reforms, expansion of the National Case Management System, strengthening the victim-friendly system, and investment in prevention and response services. These efforts, ladies and gentlemen, have yielded measurable outcomes across priority child protection areas, including violence against children, birth registration and legal identity, child labor, children on the move, access to justice, and social service workforce strengthening. However, despite these gains, children continue to face complex and evolving risks, including persistent violence, child marriages, child labor, technology-facilitated abuse, drug and substance abuse, migration-related vulnerabilities, and the impacts of socio-economic shocks and climate change. At the same time, these sectors face structural challenges related to financing, workforce capacity, coordination, and data management systems. These involving challenges demand innovative thinking, stronger partnerships, and a renewed commitment from every sector of society. It is against this backdrop that the conference comes at a particularly important moment to provide a high-level national platform. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the defining milestones of this conference will be the official launch of the National Action Plan for Children 2026 to 2030 by the Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable Colonel, retired KCD Mohadi, on Friday. The National Action Plan is fully aligned to the National Development Strategy 2, and it contributes towards the attainment of Vision 2030. The plan is supported by a comprehensive results framework that will enable government and its partners to monitor implementation and measure impact. It is anchored on 5 strategic pillars that will guide our collective efforts over the next 5 years. These are as follows: improved access to inclusive basic social services, ending violence against children, family and community capacity strengthening, elimination of child labor, institutional strengthening, and capacity building. Together, these pillars provide a comprehensive roadmap for strengthening child protection, child well-being, and ensuring that every child enjoys protection, care, and opportunities to develop. Elimination of child labor is a critical pillar, and we are particularly pleased that organized labor, employers, and government will jointly contribute to discussions on eliminating child labor, recognizing that decent work and child protection are mutually reinforcing national priorities. We are equally honored that during this conference, the Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable Colonel Retired K.C.D. Mohadi, will jointly launch the National Action Plan for Children for 2026 to 2030 and the National Child Online Protection Policy, which were recently approved by Cabinet. These landmark policies further strengthen Zimbabwe's legislative and policy framework and provides renewed direction for coordinated action to safeguard children from all forms of abuse, neglect, exploitation, and violence. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next 4 days, you will participate in various activities, which include high-level plenary sessions, regional learning exchanges, thematic breakout sessions, field visits, and policy dialogues. These engagements have been carefully designed to promote evidence-based learning and facilitate practical solutions to the challenges facing our child protection system. Special attention will be given to critical thematic areas, including violence against children, adolescent pregnancies, alternative care reforms, children on the move, child protection in emergencies, birth registration and legal identity, access to justice, drug and substance abuse, HIV-sensitive case management, and strategies for ending child labor. A key highlight of the conference will be the high-level dialogue on child protection financing. Child protection systems cannot function effectively without adequate and predictable funding. Yet, like many other countries, Zimbabwe is operating in a changing global development landscape characterized by declining external assistance arising from geopolitical and economic uncertainties. This reality calls us to rethink on how we finance child protection. We must strengthen domestic resource mobilization, embrace innovative financing mechanisms, expand partnerships with the private sector, engage local authorities and councils, and position child protection as a national investment rather than simply a social expenditure. Sustainable financing is essential if we are to implement the National Action Plan for Children 4 successfully and leave no child behind. Protecting children is not a responsibility of government alone. It requires a genuine whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach. Every ministry, every institution, every community, every family, and every citizen has a role to play in creating a safe and protective environment for children. It is through coordinated action, shared accountability, and collective ownership that will achieve lasting impact. Allow me to acknowledge the invaluable support provided by UNICEF with the support from the government of Sweden, whose long-standing partnership with the government of Zimbabwe has significantly strengthened our child protection system. And together with other local NGOs, we have contributed to the success of this conference. We look forward again, ladies and gentlemen, to host a Social Protection Week and the Southern African Experts on Social Protection Network here in Bulawayo in September. And we greatly welcome and value your support. As this phase of support comes to a close, we are grateful for the enduring legacy it has created in ending violence against children, and is the strong foundation upon which we will continue to sustain the gains. Ladies and gentlemen, the success of this conference will not be measured by the quality of our presentations alone, but by the commitments we make and the actions we take afterwards. I therefore encourage each and every one of you to participate actively, engage openly, share your expertise, and contribute practical recommendations that will culminate in a strong national child protection outcomes statement. Finally, let us seize this opportunity to reaffirm our collective responsibility to build a child protection system that is preventative, responsive, adequately financed, resilient, and capable of protecting every child everywhere in Zimbabwe. I thank you.
You do know I will say, let's clap for him again, right? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smunga. I think in very few words, it almost looks like we have our marching orders. We've been given our marching orders. Thank you for that, Mr. Smunga, representing the Permanent Secretary, the Minister of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare. At this juncture, I would like to call upon UNICEF Deputy Representative, that is Fiakra Makasi.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Thank you. Permanent Secretary for Bulawayo Metropolitan Province, Mr. Noni. Very nice to meet you. Permanent Secretary for Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare, represented here by the Acting Chief Director, Social Development and Labor Administration, Dr. Shimunga. Permanent Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Trade, represented by Ambassador Chikava. Mr. David Diaby, Chargé d'Affaires from the Embassy of Sweden. Representatives of development partners, civil society, academia, and the private sector here present. Regional and international delegates here present. Members of the media, UN agency, colleagues of mine, and most importantly, any and all children and young people who are joining us today for the conference. Good morning. It is my great honor to represent UNICEF at this National Child Protection Conference. And I would like to express our sincere appreciation to the government of Zimbabwe, particularly the Ministry for Public Service, Labor, and Social Welfare, for its leadership in convening this important gathering, as well as to the government of Sweden and to all other partners whose support and commitment have made this conference possible. Because this conference is an opportunity for us to reflect on Zimbabwe's progress in protecting children and to closely examine the challenges that remain and to renew our collective commitment to building a safer and more nurturing environment for every child. The timing of this conference is particularly significant. It coincides with the launch and operationalization of the National Action Plan for Children, 2026 to 2030, which provides a comprehensive framework for advancing child well-being and protection over the next 5 years. It also comes at a pivotal moment following Cabinet's approval of the Zimbabwe Child Online Protection Policy, which itself is a major step towards safeguarding children in an increasingly digital world. Together, these milestones reflect Zimbabwe's continued commitment to strengthening child protection systems and to responding to long-standing and emerging risks facing children. These recent commitments build on important progress already achieved. Over the years, Zimbabwe has increasingly strengthened its child protection system through key legislative reforms, the expansion of case management services, continued enhancement of the victim-friendly system, advances in birth registration and legal identity, increased attention to child labor, and sustained investments in the social service workforce. These achievements demonstrate what is possible when government, communities, development partners, civil society, and children themselves work together towards a shared vision. Yet, despite this progress, our work is far from complete. Across Zimbabwe and the wider region, children continue to face increasingly complex and interconnected risks. Violence against children remains a significant concern. Child marriage and child labor continue to undermine children's rights and their futures. While the digital environment offers enormous opportunities, it also has introduced new threats, including online violence, exploitation, and abuse. Migration, displacement, climate-related shocks, economic vulnerabilities, and public health emergencies continue to expose children to heightened protection risks. This is why this conference is so timely. At a time when external financing for social sectors is becoming increasingly constrained, countries must strengthen domestic resource mobilization, use resources more efficiently, and build resilient systems that can withstand future shocks. And Zimbabwe is no exception. Every dollar invested in preventing violence against children, supporting families, strengthening the social workforce, ensuring legal identity, protecting children on the move, and improving access to justice generates benefits that extend far beyond childhood. These investments strengthen communities. They reduce future social and economic costs, and they contribute directly to national development outcomes for generations to come. UNICEF firmly believes that investing in child protection is one of the smartest investments a country can make. It means investing in the people, the systems, and services that keep children safe from violence, exploitation, abuse, and neglect, while ensuring access to social protection, legal identity, and quality care and support. These investments not only safeguard children's rights and well-being, they also help to build stronger communities, more resilient societies, and a more prosperous future for everyone. This is why the discussions over the next 4 days are particularly important, as together we seek to position child protection as a strategic investment in human capital, in social cohesion, and in national development. I'm particularly encouraged that this conference places a strong emphasis on sustainable financing. The high-level dialogue on child protection financing provides an important opportunity to align policy ambitions with budgetary commitments and to explore new financing approaches that can help secure long-term resources for children. I'm also equally pleased that learning and exchange are integral components of this conference. Across Eastern and Southern Africa, countries are gaining valuable experience in areas such as public financing, civil registration and vital statistics digitalization, alternative care reform, workforce strengthening, and responses to migration and online risks. By learning from one another, we can avoid reinventing solutions, we can accelerate progress, and we can address common challenges. I'm reminded of that phrase, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And this week we have an opportunity to do just that. Distinguished guests, at the heart of all of our discussions, we must keep the child firmly in focus. The child who needs protection from violence, the child who requires a birth certificate to access services and opportunities, the child on the move, seeking safety, security, and hope, the child who needs a social worker, a teacher, a health worker, or a justice professional who can respond effectively to their specific needs, the child who deserves to grow up in a safe, loving, and nurturing family and community. Ultimately, the success of this conference will not be measured by the quality of our discussions alone, but it will be measured by whether the commitments we make here translate into meaningful improvements in the lives of children. Finally, let me just reaffirm UNICEF's unwavering commitment to supporting the government of Zimbabwe and all partners to strengthen child protection systems, to expand access to quality services, generate evidence, promote innovation, and ensure that every child is protected, respected, and given the opportunity to reach their full potential. With this, I wish us all fruitful deliberations and a successful conference. Thank you very much. Tatenda siyabonga.
Thank you, Fiacra Makasi. Another round of applause for it, please. All right. From UNICEF, we move to the representative, the ambassador of Sweden. He is being represented, the ambassador of Sweden, rather, is being represented today by the Charge d'Affaires, Mr. David Diaby. Floor is yours.
Permanent Secretary for Bulawayo Metropolitan Province, Mr. P. Nioni. Permanent Secretary for Public Service, Labor, Social Welfare, Mr. P. Konaka, represented by the Acting Chief Director, Social Development and Labor Administration, Mr. T. Simunga. Permanent Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Trade, represented by Ambassador Oren Chikawa. Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, Commissioner Dr. T. Nenga, Commissioner Mrs. Adelis Sibuta, the UNICEF Deputy Representative Fiacra Makasi, senior government officials present here today, UN agencies represented, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the government of Sweden, I would like to thank the government of Zimbabwe for convening this important dialogue as the country advances the implementation of the National Action Plan for Children 2026 to 2030. This dialogue reflects Zimbabwe's sustained commitment to invest in children, building on previous discussions on child budgeting and child protection financing. We commend the progress made through both legal and policy reforms, including the amended Children's Act, the Child Online Protection Policy and Investment, and strengthening the social service workforce. As many of you may know, the Embassy of Sweden in Harare will be closing in 31st of October of this year, bringing a long and valued chapter of our bilateral cooperation to an end. Though while our physical presence is changing, Sweden's commitment to human rights, and particularly children's rights, remains strong. Promoting and protecting children's rights has long been a cornerstone of Sweden's global engagement, and we remain proud of our partnership with Zimbabwe in advancing the agenda. Drawing on our experience in Zimbabwe and globally, Sweden has learned that catalytic financing requires a pathway to sustainability. Development financing delivers lasting results only when successful interventions are designed from the outset to become part of national systems. Pilot projects can demonstrate what works, but their impact is sustained only when government progressively absorb and finance them. Our collaboration on strengthening child protection case management demonstrate how partner support and government ownership can work together to build long-lasting systems. We have also learned that visibility drives investment. Child protection must be visible in national budget if it is to remain a priority. When expenditure can be tracked, measured, and assessed, they are easier to protect and expand over time. Continued efforts in budget target tagging and expenditure tracking will help ensure that investments in children remain visible, accountable, and sustainable. Another lesson learned is that human resources, the workforce, is the foundation of the system. Strong laws, policies, and protocols are all needed, but they do not protect children on their own. People do. Social workers and frontline professionals are at the center of every effective professional child protective response. Investing in this workforce constitutes one of the most consequential commitments we can undertake for advancing sustainable outcomes. because every reform ultimately depends on the capacity of these trained professionals to reach and support vulnerable children and families. We must also ensure that these investments reach all children, especially the children with disabilities, who often face multiple and compounding forms of exclusion. For Sweden, a strong child protection system is an inclusive one that is equipped to identify, protect, and support every child so that no child is left behind. Finally, sustainability is built on partnership. Development cooperation is most effective when it supports innovation, generates evidence, and strengthens national systems rather than creating parallel structures. We therefore welcome the focus on a financing partnership compact where government progressively increases domestic investment while development cooperation and partners support reforms that can be tested, scaled, and ultimately sustained through national ownership. The real measure of success will be our ability to translate these shared ambitions into clear and lasting commitments. For more than 15 years, Sweden has been a trusted partner in Zimbabwe's child protection sector, working alongside government institutions and the United Nations to strengthen national system and to protect children, expand legal identity, and improve access to justice and social services. As Sweden concludes its presence here in Zimbabwe, we humbly look back with gratitude and joy on a partnership built on shared values and a common belief that every child matters. Child protection is not just a cost, it is an investment. It makes economic sense. It supports responsible governance, and most importantly, it is simply the right thing to do. The measure of our success will not be the policies we adopt or the dialogues we convene. It will be whether a child facing violence finds that protection, whether vulnerable families will receive support, and whether a boy or a girl will grow up safe, protected, and able to reach their full potential. Let us therefore move from commitment to action, from pilots to system, and from short-term financing into long-term investments. Sustainable child protection, like we heard previously, is neither the responsibility of government alone, nor of the donors alone. It is our shared commitment to this generation of our children and the generations that will follow. I thank you.
Right, another round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Diaby. So, if you want to go fast, it was said, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go further, you go together. And we've been going together with Sweden, 15 years, and we now say goodbye. But obviously the footprint that they've had and the impact that they've had on child protection here in Zimbabwe most certainly can be felt. So another round of applause to them. Can I direct our attention now to our next presentation, which is a virtual presentation. We're going to hear remarks by the African Committee of Experts on the Rights of Children, our Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Children, that is Honorable Satang Nabane. And this will be beamed on our screens in just a moment. So can I direct our attention to our next remarks, which will be done virtually.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable Ministers, Permanent Secretaries and senior government officials, representatives of UNICEF and the UN, representatives of the government of Sweden and development partners, representatives of civil society organizations, their children, distinguished guests, good morning. I bring you warm greetings from the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. It is indeed an honor to join you virtually for the opening of this National Child Protection Conference and for what it seeks to achieve. the launch of Zimbabwe's National Action Plan for Children 2026 to 2030, and with a renewed national commitment to the protection of every child. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as the Committee Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Children, I am reminded daily that despite important progress across our continent, far too often our children continue to experience violence, child marriage, child labor, corporal punishment, and increasingly, technology-facilitated abuse. Too often, these violations occur in the very environments where children should feel safest: the home, the school, and the community. Against this backdrop, Zimbabwe's progress over the past decade deserves recognition. The expansion of the national case management system, the strengthening of the victim-friendly system, legislative reforms, and the continued investment in prevention and response services demonstrate a sustained national commitment to strengthening child protection. On behalf of the committee, I commend the government of Zimbabwe and all partners who have contributed to these achievements. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this conference emphasis on regional experience sharing from Namibia to South Africa, Rwanda, and Zambia reflects the value of African countries learning from one another and adapting successful practices to their own national context. And this is precisely the kind of cooperation that the committee encourages among member states to the African Children's Charter. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, the challenges facing children today increasingly transcend national borders. Whether we are addressing online violence, child trafficking, migration-related vulnerabilities, or the impacts of climate change, no country can respond in isolation. Strengthening national systems while learning from regional experience allows us to build more coordinated and child-centered responses across the continent. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the committee's thematic work on violence against children has consistently shown that legal and policy frameworks across Africa have advanced faster than the systems required to implement them. Financing remains constrained, the social service workforce remains under-resourced, and data systems too often fail to speak to one another. At the same time, our engagement has also shown that progress is possible when child protection is not treated as a standalone sector, but as a shared national responsibility. Sustainable results are achieved when government invests in strong institutions and adequately resource social service workforce, reliable data collection and management systems, and coordinated services that are grounded in the best interest of the child. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is therefore encouraging that this conference brings together various stakeholders to have these discussions and reflect on actionable way forward. The launch of the National Action Plan for Children 2026 to 2030 is indeed an opportunity to translate commitments into meaningful action, supported by investment and strong institutions. In closing, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child reaffirms its commitment to working alongside the government of Zimbabwe through constructive dialogue, technical cooperation, and our shared implementation of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. I wish you all fruitful deliberations as you launch the National Plan of Action for Children. Together, we can continue to work towards an Africa fit for its children. I thank you all.
The shared responsibility of child protection begins right at the home. It goes up country level, and like we've just seen, goes up continental level, and ultimately it takes a global stance. So very important remarks. And the issue of shared responsibility, that means all of us gathered here, those outside, and pretty much everybody has a shared responsibility to protect a child. So thank you indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the first bit of our program for today. Remember, I did ask you earlier on to know the person next door, and now we'll present an opportunity for you to know them even more over a cup of tea. However, before we do that, can I ask all of us to rise again? there is something that is very important, whether in a sport or any sort of setting. One of the most important things, and people that will always acknowledge, is something called a standing ovation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you see your program, we have the government of Zimbabwe policy. We've got people who have come behind the scenes to be friends of children. Sweden, they're living. UNICEF, thank you very much. And all of us as CSOs, we've come together to protect children. So can we please give ourselves a standing ovation? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, tea is served. Thank you. Or do feel free to interact now. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would like you to wave, oh, this is my favorite, because before I joined the development sector, I always found this very strange. I would like you to wave if you are part of CSOs and you're wearing a suit for the first time for males. No need to be shy. I would like you to wave if you are in this sector and you have more than 3 suits. My point exactly. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We'll continue with our program. There's been a great deal of sharings that have taken place over the last number of, over the last few hours that we have been here. The 5 objectives were shared by Mr. Zimbabwe. We also heard how best do we, what the deliberations that we're having today are going to be about. The National Action Plan is, this is the best thing, you are always getting bits and bits when you are here. And I like the fact that it's written Director of Ceremonies, because this is the one time that I actually become a director. I've worked under a lot of directors, but today it's my day. So, please congratulate me for being appointed a director. Thank you. I think it's also important that we acknowledge some of our regional representatives that have joined us. I hear, in fact, not just here, but I also had a chance to meet with them just to present them to the House. We've got friends and delegation that came from Zambia. If I could have the gentleman to just stand and wave to the crowd. There we are. All right. Let's give them a big round of applause. Fantastic, fantastic. So the National Action Plan for Children is going to be launched. That is on the final day of this program. Many might be thinking, this is NAP 4. We have NAP 1, NAP 2, NAP 3. This is where we came from. So what is the current state when it comes to child protection here in Zimbabwe? For that, allow me to call the Deputy Director, Child Protection, that's in the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare, Mr. Paungano, to give us an the evolution and status of child protection in Zimbabwe. Mr. Paungano. As Mr. Paungano is coming, if anyone is missing a phone by any chance, please do find me. I'll be sitting right by the right side.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Is it still morning? Yes. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to start by acknowledging the permanent secretaries who are here present, and also all the dignitaries who are here present. Allow me to say all protocols observed. So my task here is to take you through the evolution of child protection in Zimbabwe, with a particular perspective and a focus on the National Action Plan for Children. I'm sure during the remarks that were made by the Chief Director, he did mention that during the course of this conference, we will also witness the official launch of the National Action Plan for Children, Phase 4, which indicates that this is not the first phase of the National Action Plan, but we do have predecessor National Action Plans that we were implementing as the government of Zimbabwe. While we are doing so, I think it is
important for us to then understand the current status of child protection in Zimbabwe. So where we are coming from, the National Action Plan for Children, previously referred to as the National Action Plan for Orphans and Vulnerable Children, we can trace the journey of this National Action Plan from as far back as 2005. So if you recall that during this time, as a country, we were grappling with the HIV and AIDS scourge, and we had a mass orphanhood crisis as a country. So because of this, the National Action Plan, it was then muted and developed to address the challenges that we're grappling with as a country, especially with respect to HIV and AIDS response. So you will see that largely the National Action Plan for Orphans and Vulnerable Children, phase 1, it was mainly focusing on HIV response. That was the context during that time. So during this time, what is it that we're witnessing as a country? We were witnessing an increase in the number of children without parental care. We were witnessing an increased number of children who were living and working on the streets. Destitution and abandonment of children, they were the order of the day, to the extent that even our alternative care facilities, our residential child care facilities, they were overwhelmed to capacity. So, because of this, the government of Zimbabwe, through the representatives who attended the United Nations General Assembly Special Session, which emphatically placed importance on the need for countries to develop national action plans and strategies to address the challenges that we were grappling with during that phase. So as such, in 2005, it was officially launched by the then Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Joyce Teurairo Pamujuru. What were the objectives of the National Action Plan for Orphan and Vulnerable Children, phase 1? So its objectives were to strengthen the existing coordination structures for all VC programs. So during this time, you would understand that there was a lot of fragmentation of services, and there was a coordination gap. So to that extent, we really needed to come up with a coordination structure that would ensure that our OVC programs, they are implemented in a well-structured and coordinated manner. And then again, the other objective was to increase resource mobilization through financing from development partners, civil society organizations, as well as private sector. And also, the other thing that was also critical was the issue of emphasizing on the best interest of the child as well as child participation. So during this time, we then saw the increased participation of children, moving away from tokenism. And I remember during this time, we began to establish what are called child-led child protection committees for us to give a platform and a voice to children so that they can contribute to any decision that affects them. And then there was also increase in the percentage of children who were without birth registration. As such, we had an objective that was focusing on access to birth registration. In terms of education, there was an objective that focused on formal education and extracurricular education, in social services provision, livelihood support, as well as child protection. So while these objectives, they were very, very key in addressing the challenges that we're encountering as a country, but still you would find that there were a lot of gaps that really needed to be addressed after the review of the NAP OVC phase 1. And what were some of these weaknesses that we observed? One of them is that NAP for OVC phase 1, it's mainly focused on reach more than the quality of services. So during this phase, you would find that organizations would present astronomical figures and statistics of indicating reach. But then when you look at the quality of services that were being provided, there were a lot of gaps. We always refer to this one incident where the former director, social welfare, then Mr. Mishi, may he so rest in peace, he always made reference to a particular organization that was into education assistance. And the organization would travel all the way from Harare, travel 300 kilometers with the Land Cruisers, big vehicles, only for them to disperse some few pencils and exercise books. And when they go back to their offices, they would write very big and informative reports. But then, if you look at the service that was being provided and the quality that the children were deriving from those services, you would find that there were a lot of gaps. So because of this, there was a review of the National Action Plan for Children, phase 1. Again, even though the National Action Plan for OVC, phase 1, tried to strengthen coordination, but still there were a lot of coordination gaps. One thing that I noticed during its implementation is that NAP for OVC phase 1, it relied mostly on implementation through non-state actors, NGOs, while at the same time government, in terms of its systems, they were very weak. So this was one of the key findings of the review of the NAP for OVC phase 1, which then prompted us to then review and come up with a successor National Action Plan, which was the National Action Plan for orphaned and vulnerable children, phase 2. So NAP for OVC phase 2, it had 4 pillars, unlike the initial NAP 1. The idea was to ensure that it remains focused and ensure that we give services that enhance the quality of services and the well-being of children. So the NAP 2, in terms of its period of implementation, it was from 2011 to 2015, meaning that it was a 5-year action plan. So one of the pillars was on household economic strengthening, which was a departure from NAP 1. NAP 1, it was focusing on individual children. We would target an individual child within a household of 5 to 10 people. If you are to bring any form of service, you would bring a bag of mealie meal for that particular child. But then we had to review this, focusing more on household economic strengthening with the realization that children, they do not exist in isolation. But what we need is to understand the ecosystem that surrounds children and the need for us to strengthen all the systems that surround children. And family strengthening was one of the key focus of NAP 2. So you would find that during this phase, that is when, as a country, we really strengthened our social protection system. So we were implementing a child-sensitive social protection system, which was focusing on households that are supporting children who are orphaned and vulnerable. So during this implementation phase, you would find that a number of households, they benefited from the social assistance phase that we were providing with the assistance from UNICEF through the Child Protection Fund phase 1. And then the other pillar, it was focusing on access to basic services to ensure that children have got access to education, they are receiving disability inclusive services children also have access to justice and also birth registration, amongst others. And then the other pillar, it was on child protection. I think one of the key issues under child protection that we need to also highlight during the course and the phase of NAP or VC phase 2 is the introduction of the National Case Management System. So the so-called National Case Management System, it was developed during the course of the NAP for OVC phase 2. And to us, it is a significant stride that we have made as a country. And under the National Case Management System, we saw the decentralization of child protection services and social protection services, bringing our services closer to the communities through a decentralized case management system where we had our community cadres who are referred to as community child care workers. I understand that in this house we do have community child care workers who are represented here. Maybe if they are here, they can raise their hands so that you can see them. Yes, you can see all these hands. So these are the men and women whom we call our foot soldiers. They are working in communities, and their role is to identify and to refer cases for specialist child protection services, and to link them at community level with the resources and the partners that are working within their communities. This was born out of the idea that communities, they are not passive, and communities, they've got agency. And we are working not from a deficit perspective, but we are working from an understanding that communities, they do have strengths. Of course, they might need support, but the support, it needs to come in and strengthen what they already have. So it's a community-based approach that was introduced to strengthen our child protection system during this phase. And we are still seeing its importance and relevance as we are implementing the National Case Management System even to date. And you would realize that even now, CCWs, they've become part and parcel of government structures at community level. And not only are they useful to the Department of Social Development, but other ministries, department agencies, as well as partners who are working at community level. I think, ladies and gentlemen, if you just, because these people, they are volunteers, who are volunteering their time, we are volunteering their resources and expertise to support children within our communities. So maybe if you can just give them a big round of applause for the work that they are doing to save children in our communities. And over the years, I'm glad that through the support that we're receiving under CPF, they have gone through a lot of trainings and capacity building and strengthening, to the extent that I was joking the other time, last week when I was presenting, in saying that some of these CCWs, they can even induct some of our social development officers who are still new in the department. Why? Is because of the institutional memory that they have and the experience that they have working with communities and children. And then the fourth pillar, it was focusing on program management. So during this phase, we saw the establishment of a secretariat which was responsible for the overall coordination of the National Action Plan at national level. And then going on, so the National Case Management System, again, it helped to develop the minimum standards for service provision and strengthening monitoring and follow-up. Unlike the phase 1 of NAP, where our services were fragmented, so during this phase of NAP now, we were trying to ensure that we are providing comprehensive services to children, a comprehensive package of services to children and minimum standards of service provision. Not to say that if one child receives a pencil or a book, then we would tick a box to say that we have reached out to children without meeting their comprehensive needs. So, and then again, this approach, it relies and depends on the linkages with other programs to ensure that children, they are assisted in a holistic manner. So these are some of the community child care workers that are working in communities. So the key highlights or the key milestones that I would like to emphasize on under NAP phase 2 is the harmonized social cash transfer, which helped to strengthen the household economy and also to address the economic factors that perpetuate the abuse of children at a household level. And then improvement in coordination and the national case management system, which was also brought, and again, a robust M&E system was introduced. And then as we transitioned from the NAP 2 to NAP 3, the aim was then to ensure that resources they are directed to where they are needed the most, and also ensuring that national ownership and sustainability are placed at the center of our implementation. And then again, the need to generate evidence such that our interventions are evidence-based and evidence-informed. So there was a lot of investment in research as well as lessons learning to address some of the challenges that we're encountering as an institution. So in terms of this period of implementation, it ran from 2015 to 2020. Again, we were continuing with this HIV-sensitive case management system, focusing on the ultra-poor, labor-constrained households. And we also further strengthened the case management system, cascading it further to other districts that were not part of the piloting districts under the predecessor National Action Plan. And then what is it that went well? Under NAP 3. So there was strengthened monitoring and evaluation, improvement in budget releases for social protection and child protection programs, a system strengthening and policy review. So we saw the strengthening of our alternative care system through, one, the national introduction of the National Residential Child Care Standard, even the review of the National Residential Care Standards, and the introduction of the foster care guidelines, and also the alignment of some of our laws. And then there was also improved coordination of social protection programs to ensure that our social protection programs are shock responsive. In the areas of improvement, following the evaluation, one was there was still a gap in terms of coordination. And then whilst we introduced the management information systems, we had a management information system for case management, we had a management information system for the basic education assistant module, we had a management information system for social case transfers. But then there was an observed need for us to ensure that our systems are interoperable, because at that moment and at the moment, they are not still interoperable. And I am glad that with the support that we are receiving from various ministries as well as partners, we, as a ministry, have developed a social registry, and this is a game changer in terms of social protection in Zimbabwe, as well as child protection. As these systems, they will be interoperable with other systems, including the DHIS2, as well as the civil registry and vital statistics system. And then another area of improvement is on the retention of social service workforce in Zimbabwe. And it's still a challenge that we are faced with as a ministry and as a nation. If you look, last week we were conducting an induction workshop for the newly recruited social development officers. So I remember we trained 2 different groups, and one group had almost like 80 new officers who were recruited by the ministry over the past 2 years. And we are seeing this serious brain drain in our nation. And because of this, I know that government is making strenuous efforts to ensure that we retain the social service workforce, and I'm glad that Public Service Commission went a step further and categorized social workers amongst the critical skills in government. But more needs to be done in terms of retention of social service workforce. And I'm looking at Dr. Nenga here. She did sterling work for us by leading a consultation on social services workforce assessment in Zimbabwe. And what we now need is to come up with strategies that ensure that we retain and capacitate the current social service workforce. Because they are a key enabler in everything that we are doing. They are a key enabler in the provision of child protection services. And then now, as we are in 2026, I know that the last phase of NAP, it was from 2015 to 2020, 2016 to 2020. But then one might need to ask what then happened in between 2026 and 2020. So immediately after 2020, as a country and globally, we were faced with the COVID-19 that we were all grappling with, and because of that, the NAP was not reviewed as was expected. But all the same, now we are faced with new challenges. And as a country, we have got a key responsibility to ensure that we address the gaps that we are currently faced with. And one of them is that irrespective of the progress that we have made as a country in terms of legislative and policy reforms, ironically, we have been seeing an increase in violence against children. We have been seeing an increase in adolescent pregnancies. And this is irrespective of the legislative reforms that we have made. Meaning that more needs to be done in terms of enforcement and implementation of the current laws and policies that we have as a country. And then again, we also saw during the COVID-19 an increase in drug and substance abuse, also affecting children. And also, as a country, we are very much worried about this because this ends up eroding our very human capital base as a country. That makes Zimbabwe proud, and that makes Zimbabwe a marvel, not only in the SADC region, but even globally. That is why you find that countries in Europe, countries in America, they are always seeking for technical experts and professionals from Zimbabwe because of our human capital that we have invested in as a country. But drug and substance abuse is now coming in as an existential threat to our nation, and this needs to be addressed. And then we also have got an issue of child labor that we are also grappling with across various sectors. And then early childhood development. Yes, I know that more often we refer to early childhood development, especially with respect to early childhood education. But I am glad that Cabinet approved the Early Childhood Development Coordination Framework. And this coordination framework is very, very key. Why? It's because it's bringing together all MDAs, it's bringing together civil society organizations, local authorities, non-state actors who are very key in contributing to the early stages of childhood or early stages of human life. As a country, the way we implement our social protection programs, we are guided by the life cycle approach. And this life cycle approach, it begins at conception. And to us, the first 1,000 days of a child's life, they are very, very critical. So that is why we need to be very intentional in terms of investment in early childhood development through ensuring that our children, they live in a safe, secure, and receive the nurturing care that they so require. So you would find that the Early Childhood Development Coordination Framework, which was approved by government, it focuses on issues of health, it focuses on issues of nutrition, it focuses on early education and early childhood education and stimulation, which is very critical. It focuses on issues of parent and caregiver support, what we refer to as nurturing care, which is very, very critical. And then we've got a challenge of teenage pregnancies. Just 2 weeks ago, the Ministry of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare recently launched the multi-sectoral framework on the prevention and management of adolescent pregnancies in Zimbabwe. And this framework, it was informed by the National Assessment on Adolescent Pregnancies, which was commissioned in 2023. And this framework, it seeks to address the current gaps that we are faced with as a nation, where we have a prevalence of adolescent pregnancies rising from around, from I think the percentage, there are more than 144% over a period of about 5 to 10 years. And because of this, it is a challenge that this National Action Plan needs to address through a multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary, and whole-of-government approach. And then on issues of child marriages, again, it is an issue that we need to put our hands together and ensure that children, they are not married before the age of majority. And again, we need to ensure that the current laws that we have, which I know that they are very protective, and which we know that they are very comprehensive, but what is needed is for us to put our hands together and ensure that we enforce the current laws, we enforce the current policies to address these challenges. Child protection in emergencies. We are in a phase where there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of weather patterns, and we as human beings, we don't have control over this. And what we have read and what we have seen is that children, they are the worst affected by climate change, as well as the impact of climate change on communities. Let alone children with disabilities, they are even in a worse condition and vulnerable to all these caprices. Online violence, it is a current emerging challenge that we are faced with. And I know that as a country, we have got the cyber and data protection laws that have been enacted by Zimbabwe. And then again, recently, Cabinet approved the National Child Online Protection Policy to strengthen the protective measures around children. But then what is needed now is to come up with a way of supporting parents and caregivers to be able to support children within an environment where everything is digital. So what we want is not to decapacitate children in terms of their digital skills, but what is needed is a balance between capacitation and also protection of children. Because there is a real risk that if we over-regulate the use of technology by children, we might actually maybe be throwing away the baby with the bathwater, which is not what we want. So I am glad that during the course of this conference, we will also, we are co-launching 2 policies here. One, it is the National Action Plan for Children, Phase 4, and also the launch of the National Child Online Protection Policy, which is a very key policy for the protection of our children. And then issues of mental health and psychosocial support. Over the years, we have seen abominable things happening, where we have got children as young as 9 years old committing suicide. Why? It's because of the unaddressed mental health issues. So issues of mental health and psychosocial support amongst children, they need to be taken seriously. And I'm glad that you have got Ministry of Education who are here, and they have been implementing anti-bullying policies. They have been strengthening child safeguarding even at school level, where we have been seeing a lot of mental health issues being reported. And then issues of comprehensive support to children, leaving no one and no place behind. Disability inclusion and disability sensitive programming is very, very key. And yes, I know that the Department of Disability Affairs will make a presentation sometime tomorrow on the issues of inclusivity. But whilst we are at this conference, in all our deliberations, in all our conversations, let's not forget this special category of children whose rights need to be protected by the men and women who are gathered in this house. After care services for care leavers is another key area as we are focusing on alternative care. I know that over the years we have been investing so much in our children through alternative care, through placement of children in institutions. But what we have been observing is that all that investment can go down the drain if we do not ensure that there is a seamless transition of our children as they leave care and are discharged from institution. So because of this, it's a gap that needs to be addressed. And then issues of linkages with the National Development Plan. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that the current National Action Plan that will be launched here, it is running from 2026 to 2030, meaning that this action plan is fully aligned to the duration of the National Development Strategy 2. So you will see that this policy will have key pillars that are addressing all the issues that I've made reference to. In particular, the child labor pillar is going to be a new pillar that is introduced by the National Action Plan. And I'm glad that we have our social partners who are here, our organized labor is here, our employers, they are here, as well as government. And the child labor pillar, it is a new pillar altogether, which was not in the predecessor NAPS. And this pillar, it seeks to address issues of child labor and strengthen the capacity of communities to care for children so that they do not end up using negative coping mechanisms which border around exploitation of children. Issues of violence against children. Yes, as a country, we did sign the We Protect Pledge against online violence in 2019, and we are seeing that from 2019 there is a lot of progress in terms of strengthening our laws and policies and regulations around online safety. So what is the theory of change of the National Action Plan for Children, phase 4? The theory of change is built on the idea that if adequate access to inclusive basic social services is provided, and if there's reduced children's exposure to harm, if there are increased capacities of families and communities to take care of their children, and if there's elimination of all forms of child labor, if institutional capacity is strengthened for law enforcement, policy, and program implementation, and if there is good management and coordination among all the 5 key pillars and key results area, then children in Zimbabwe will have improved well-being, resulting in a Zimbabwe where every child enjoys inclusive, sustainable, and rights-based care and protection. So under this NAP for children, so by the way, we have seen that the first phase of the NAP, it was referred to as National Action Plan for Orphans and Vulnerable Children, and as well as the second and the third NAP. But now, with this 4th phase, we are no longer focusing only on orphans and vulnerable children, since all children are regarded to be vulnerable. And then again, as a country, the context has changed, and there is an evolution in terms of the socio-economic circumstances of our country. We are no longer necessarily in a phase where we have got a challenge of course, HIV. We still have incidents of HIV and AIDS, but as a country, I'm sure we have made significant strides in addressing issues of HIV. Of course, in terms of targets, 95 targets on children, we are still lagging behind, but now the focus is more on all children to ensure that our programming focuses all children, leaving no child behind. And then our goal is improved well-being of children in Zimbabwe with the vision where we are envisioning a Zimbabwe where every child enjoys inclusive, sustainable, and rights-based care and protection by 2030 to fully develop into responsible adults. So there are 5 pillars that comprise this National Action Plan for Children. We have got 1 pillar that is focusing on improved access to inclusive basic social services. And the second pillar is focusing on ending violence against children. By the way, as a country, we are a member of the Pathfinding Global Alliance on Ending Violence Against Children. And we made a pledge during the Global Ministerial Conference in 2024 to end all forms of violence against children. We have an opportunity to also share with you our pledge as a country, which is focused on the 7 Inspire strategies. And then we have got a pillar which is focusing on family and community capacity building. Why this pillar? Is because everything, it boils down on caregiver support and community support. So you see an increased investment in positive parenting and parent and caregiver support. Issues of drug and substance abuse, parenting, and other issues also that we are dealing with. Now we are talking about even issues of online violence. Parents themselves, are they capacitated enough to be able to assist children who are more techno-savvy than themselves? Some of us, we might not have the skills to be able to do so. So we need to capacitate parents in terms of this particular responsibility. And then we have got a pillar on elimination of child labor, and the last pillar is on institutional strengthening and capacity building.